Hello everyone, I welcome you all to the session 3 of the week 4 of the strategic sales management course. So as far as the last session was concerned, we basically discussed about the perspectives on consumer decision making processes, where we looked at the input part, process part, and finally at the output part, where we also discussed about the role of or handling cognitive dissonance, and specifically in all these stages we also discussed what is the role which is played by the salesman. So as far as today's session is concerned, once we are done, you'll be able to understand the B2B decision making processes and definitely the role of salesman in this. Apart from that, you will also understand the difference between B2C and B2B selling. Now when you talk about the B2B decision making processes, see, if the fundamental things are going to be the same. Even a business organization is not going to buy the product for its own use until unless they recognize a problem, and even before buying they'll also be having some evaluation criteria with which they'll be definitely evaluating various options. But the only difference is, or maybe one of the differences I would say, usually B2B decision making is a long process. It takes a lot of time because you could have the whole buying center, people with different expectations from different departments who could be evaluating the offer. Then it also might have a round of discussions or presentations before the final decision. And definitely, because even with respect to the resources involved or the resources which will be utilized with respect to what is being purchased, that could be very high vis-a-vis a consumer decision making process. So even in B2B decision making, the first stage again is going to be problem recognition. Now particularly in business to business buying decisions, there could be two kind of stimuli that might stimulate problem recognition. One is, let's say, internal, in which the company decides to develop a new product, or maybe let's say the machinery which they are using is underperforming or it has broken down, or anything which is related to internal factors. Let's say they might realize that the capacity with which we are operating now is very less. Now if we move to the new machinery or the new technology, then we could actually improve our performance. Otherwise it might happen on account of external stimuli, which is they might get a new idea at a trade show, or maybe they got a call from the salesperson in which he successfully explained them what is so special about his offering. Then they decide to give it some time to evaluate it. Now in this case also, it is very important with respect to the role of a salesperson. First is that he might make the prospect realize their need, in the sense, like if you put it technically, his job is to move them from internal passive state to internal active state. Now internal passive state simply means when they have realized that there is a problem but still they are not acting on it. The engineer who is working in a plant might realize that we are operating under capacity, or the machinery has kind of worn out and we need a new one, but still he might keep the things, or he might maintain the status quo, might not put in a request for a new machinery. Now this is basically called as an internal passive stage. Now the job of a salesperson is to move them to internal active, which means that they realize that there is a problem and they need to act on it. Now even in internal active situations, it becomes very critical for the salesman to pin down or to make the prospect or customer realize that how his product or offering is going to help them solve problems or bring in a lot of benefits with respect to improving their existing performance. So the whole idea is to make them act, and this is only going to happen when the salesperson makes them realize that there is a problem, and if you don't act on it, it is definitely going to be fatal for you in the times to come, or even in the present times. Now once that is done, when you talk about B2B buying, there has to be very precise or critical need description and product specification. Let's say if they need a raw material, or they need a sub part for a machinery, or they need to buy something which will be utilized as an ingredient or a part for the product, they need to specifically pinpoint its specifications with respect to the size or various other parameters which need to fit in the required criteria. Let's say if there is a car manufacturing company and they need to decide to buy the tires, so they have to clearly pinpoint what is going to be the size, what is going to be the quality, and a lot more other factors which might impact the performance of the final product. Now this should be done by the decision making unit or by the buying center or the technical team which is involved. Now once the need description and product specification is done, they start reaching out to the suppliers to submit proposals, or this is more about soliciting various proposals with respect to the requirement. Now the other way could be you might go for an extensive search for suppliers through trade directives when it is a technical product or is only sold by a few people. You might go for online search, you might go with referrals, trade advertisements in which you might invite people, and also you might also check if there is a particular person at a trade show or a seller at a trade show who can fulfill your requirement. Once that is done, as I said, you will ask them to submit proposals, or you will call for, if we say it technically, this stage is about proposal solicitation. After the proposal solicitation part, it becomes important that they are evaluated properly. Now this phase is all about, the buying center or the decision making unit will check whether all the technical criteria specified are being met by the seller submitting the proposal or not. Once they are satisfied, then they can call a few shortlisted suppliers for presentations. Now in this case, the role of salesman again becomes very crucial or very critical. One is, before giving the presentations, he or she should be very well prepared or should do an extensive needs analysis. Apart from that, they should also focus on handling all kinds of objections in one of the most efficient ways. Because see, if the objections, or as we had discussed in one of our sessions, if the objections are not handled well, then definitely there is going to be a gap with respect to your as well as the buyer's understanding, or maybe you might not be on the same page with respect to closing the deal. Now once the proposals have been evaluated, you are definitely going to select one of them and place an order. Now in this case also, you might have different rounds of negotiations to arrive at the best deal. But one thing which is very important is that the salesperson should definitely strive to arrive at a win-win situation, because if you remember, even when we are talking about the Miller's-Heman approach to strategic selling, this was a very important facet, because if you arrive at a deal which is not beneficial for you but is beneficial for the buyer, anyway you are at a loss and this is going to be bad business. Now if you arrive at a deal which is kind of beneficial for you but not for the buyer, then again it is not going to work in long term, and with time he might realize that he or she might not even prefer to do business with you again. Now once the order has been placed, then it is only going to be with time that you should go ahead and take both the informal and formal feedback on the seller. And as far as the salesperson is concerned, his job is all about not vanishing and making sure that he or she keeps in regular touch with the buyer and work towards building the satisfaction and delight factor. Because see, the whole idea is, we are not looking at the short term orientation of sales management, in which once the deal is done, the role of the salesperson is order over. That's not the case. What we are looking at is a long term commitment with respect to even going ahead with cross selling and upselling by nurturing that relationship and stimulating the delight factor. Now there are three important concepts which again we need to understand with respect to B2B decision making, or there is a one concept of a buy class, but it has three sub-dimensions. One is straight rebuy. Straight rebuy simply means the same orders are placed to the same seller in the same quantity. To what we just discussed, now these are the people who have invested a lot in nurturing that relationship and co-creating value with respect to their buyers, in the sense like they went ahead and they made sure that they were satisfied and delight element was brought in, and they kind of had discussions how they both can arrive at win-win situations, or they mutually kept creating value for each other. But modified rebuy in a situation where the terms could be negotiated upon with the existing seller, and some new competitors could also be invited. So this might require an alteration of existing supply procedures concerning prices, quality and delivery. Now in this case, with respect to salesman, what becomes important is that he should still strive to be on the preference list. Whereas if you look at competitors, they would get into the market and they'll definitely try to offer something better to keep you out of the line now. Whereas the new task with respect to B2B buying or buying class is a situation where it is a new need, maybe arising out of any of the internal or external stimuli, then whole purchase process of B2B will be followed, and this again is going to be a very time consuming process. Now I just gave you perspectives about the B2B decision making processes, right? So apart from that, again there is one more concept that we need to understand, which is called as the buy class. Now it has basically three facets. One is the straight rebuy. See, in this case same orders are placed to the same seller in the same quantity, which means there is no change, right? But still, the role of the salesperson even in straight rebuy is to reassure the buyer that they have made the right choice, they have made the right decision. It is more like fostering their confidence and also working on the relationship so that they always give you that extra edge. Whereas the next facet is modified rebuy. This is more like a situation where the terms of the contract or buying could be negotiated upon with the existing seller again, and you might also see a few competitors getting into the picture. So in this case what becomes important is that you go ahead and offer something extra. I'm talking about with respect to the salesman, and you retain that particular customer or client of yours. So in this case also it becomes very important that you keep yourself updated with respect to who are the new players, what is it extra that they might be offering, or what is it so special about their product or maybe their unique selling proposition which might make it difficult for you to kind of retain those particular customers. So in this case also the role of the salespersons become critical. Now the last is new task. Now this is more like a situation where even the business buyer is kind of facing the situation or a problem for the first time, where they need to execute the B2B decision making process. It is definitely going to be time consuming, and it will kind of cover all the important elements with respect to the role of a salesperson, with respect to making them feel that they need this product, or how it is going to help them solve their problems, satisfy their needs, or improve their business processes or efficiency. Then with respect to presentations also, all these things are going to come in picture, with respect to handling objections, providing them all kind of right information and things like that. But new task simply indicates that this is the purchase is being made for the first time. They have no past experience with respect to the product or even the sellers, and it is definitely going to be a lot more time consuming with respect to the straight rebuy and modified rebuy. Now once we are done with this, I think in the last leg what we will be discussing is the contrast between consumer and industrial buying. So the first difference is fewer larger buyers. See, if you talk about organizational buyers, they usually cater to a small number of large buyers. Large buyers means who are buying in large quantity from you, but their count could be small, right? So this is one thing which kind of differentiates organizational buying from the consumer buying. Whereas as far as consumers are concerned, you might have them in millions. Just imagine, for a particular brand of noodles you might have consumers spread across the country, ranging from even Jammu and Kashmir to Kerala. So these could be in millions, but this is not going to be the case with organizational buyers. Apart from that, organizational buying or industrial buying is far more professional. See, it is the decision making unit or the buying center, as we have been discussing. They'll be making all the purchases in line with the organizational policies, constraints and requirements, and they have to specify each and everything very clearly with respect to terms and conditions, very concrete, specifications about what they exactly need, and all these facets are going to matter much more in the professional purchasing. Whereas with respect to consumer buying, you might have simply one individual making all the purchasing, and it is not very professional, right? Professional in the sense like you might not have a committee in consumer buying with respect to the different products that you might need in your day-to-day life and things like that. Whereas in industrial buying, these things are going to be very different. Third could be multiple buying influences. As we have already been discussing, when you talk about organizational buying, you have a buying center in which you have people coming from different departments with different mindsets, with different expectations, which makes it a lot more critical than consumer buying. Whereas, as already said, in consumer buying, you might have in majority of cases the single individual making all the choices. Other difference could be, as far as the organizational buying is concerned, you might have a round for presentations, different rounds where you could be discussing different things, but that is not going to be the case with consumer buying. See, if you remember, we also spoke about the concept of team selling, right? When you have different members, one could specialize in negotiation, one could specialize in, let's say, If the product is technical with respect to the nature of the product, one could specialize in giving presentations. So all these people could be giving different presentations to the buying organization. So when you talk about industrial buying, it is usually, they have this element of inelastic demand, which means that when the prices fall, the case is not going to be like, the car companies will buy more of rubber or more of tires. These things are not going to work like that. Whereas as far as the consumer markets are concerned, when the price falls, you will see a lot of consumers buying more of products. Another thing which we can definitely consider in organizational buying is, as the output is sold to a few large buyers, there is intimacy in relationships. And we have also talked about the concept of the sellers going ahead and even making investments with respect to creating a mutual win-win relationship, right? And maybe if it is a key account in which a major chunk of revenue is coming from them, they will definitely go ahead and make that investment. This might not exist in the case of consumer buying. Apart from that, the other difference is you might see a lot of business buyers or organizational buyers concentrated at the specific geographical locations. This again is not going to be the case with consumer buying. You might see consumers spread across the country in different locations, in different territories, different cities, and even different villages. So these are a few things which actually differentiate B2C and B2B selling. In the form of a table also it has been presented for you. So even at this snapshot, you will be able to kind of make out the difference that exists between B2C and B2B selling. So as far as today's session was concerned, I hope you definitely gained some insights from B2B decision making processes. So thanking you for now. We'll be definitely meeting again in the next session.